everyone. I'm Melissa Twisdale, reading specialist, and I'll be sharing with you today some ideas for making lesson planning an easier process, that it is going to become a non-issue for teachers as we build systems approaches to lesson planning. And what I mean by that is that the lessons that we teach have a common point, and that we can layer new instruction on the previous instruction, which creates a system for teachers, and it also provides schema or common points for our learners so that the learning builds. Specifically, I'm talking about literacy-based instruction, and all of the instruction builds on a basic fundamental understanding of the reading process. And so today I'm going to be sharing with you how to make that a reality for your classroom, and so that you can create lessons that will build with you throughout your career. Outline for the reading process. We all know it as before, during, and after. And the actions that are happening during the before, during, and after phases of reading are what I'm going to outline for you today. So this is an anchor chart that you're going to want to make with your students. And I'm at home, so I don't have access to my big charts and markers. But I'm going to show you just using a piece of notebook paper. And of course, the first thing you're going to want to do is give it a title. And then you're going to break this side of the chart down for your students, before, during, and after. And I usually have students make a poster right along with me, and then that poster that I'm making is going to have a permanent place on my wall, because this is going to be the common point for every time I teach a comprehension strategy, that this will be the common point, because you're going to use this process every time you read. And the beautiful thing about using a process like this is that this can be applied to the reading that students are doing for enjoyment, the reading that they're doing for learning, and the reading that they are going to be doing for testing. This is a seamless approach. And so before you read, what do? Well, even starting as early as pre-K and kindergarten, we teach children how to take a picture walk. Later, that picture walk becomes previewing. And so I have them make a big P on their paper. And we talk about how when you were learning about picture walking in kindergarten and pre-K, what you were learning about is the importance of previewing your text, so that you're giving yourself a movie trailer for your book. What would happen if you went to a movie and you had no idea what it was going to be about? Maybe you didn't even know what kind of movie it was. Was it going to be a funny movie? Was it going to be a serious movie? Was it going to be an adventure movie? If you had no idea what that movie was going to be about, that would affect your comprehension of the movie. It would affect how quickly you understood what was going on. The same is true for reading. If we do not give ourselves a movie trailer for our book before we start reading, then comprehension of a text is going to be more difficult. And so we want to take a picture walk. As we get older, we know picture walking is the same as previewing. And we're previewing to, first of all, determine the genre. And then we're going to preview, and then we're going to predict the big ideas of the story. You and I know big ideas as main idea or summary. And so when I look at this title, and then I look at the pictures with my students, and I'm teaching them this process, and then I read the summary on the back, then we learn that we can actually predict a summary for this text before we read. The way I teach summary is I have my students think, who's the who, what's the what, add a so, or a but. And we talk about summaries that are spoiler summaries, and those are summaries that actually give the resolution in a text, and then a non-spoiler summary. And so we want to have a non-spoiler summary, of course, for this one, because we haven't read the book Angel Child, Dragon Child, and I look at the pictures and the summary, then I know that Who's the Who is a girl named Oot and her family. That's the who. The what is that they have come to the United States from another country called Vietnam, and Oot goes to an American school for the first time, and she doesn't feel like she fits in. So there's my summary prediction. So you're teaching children how smart their brains are. I can determine the big ideas before I even read. That means that I'm comprehending before I even read the words of my text. And so I'm previewing, predicting a summary so that I have a movie trailer for my book. Then I'm going to teach my students the importance, and I'm going to revisit this again and again, because it is through that repetition and through your showing them the truth of the power in this process that they are going to learn it. When we make learning, when we make literacy learning linear, then we teach children that reading is a mystery and that it's a long road that you never reach the end to. That is not how we want to teach reading. We want to teach students that reading is a process that you can count on. When you are reading, you're thinking, and there are things that happen in a reader's mind during the process of reading that is predictable and reliable, and it does work. It does help you to understand what you're reading. So while we read, we think. Always think while reading. Always while. So if we're thinking while reading, we want to provide students with a strategy, a tool for how to keep track of the parts of what I'm reading. And so we monitor meaning using a mind map during reading. And after we have previewed to determine the genre, then we know what kind of mind map we're going to use. If it's a story like this book is, Angel Child, Dragon Child, then I know that I'm going to use a story map. And I just teach children how to make 4 boxes, because we know that the genre, characters of fiction, setting is organized plot, like a story, resolution. The genre of fiction is organized like a story. And a story, when I talk about genre, oftentimes I will use certain words interchangeably, and I might focus on the word story at first more than I focus on the word fiction, because a lot of times students, by the time they become transitional readers, they have received a lot of mixed information about the word fiction. A lot of times students are taught at a very young age that the word fiction is the same thing as fake. And of course, that is not true. Fiction can be true. Fiction can be historical, and it can provide information about historical events, historical stories. And so fiction can be realistic. It can be based on truth. Stories can come from history. And so I don't think it is so wrong to use the word fake as it is to tell children what to think. I think we all know that teaching isn't telling, and the moment we tell students something, they stop thinking. And so we want to guide students to conclusions about genre. And if we help them understand that when when you're reading a story, there are certain parts that are going to be there, and there are parts of that text that will help you to understand what you're reading. Then we have created some schema, some common points that we can build on each time we teach. And so we're going to teach them a frame for how to think when we're reading a story like this one. This is an actual story map that a second grader created when I was reading a book called Enemy Pie to his class, and you can see all the different layers of thinking that was going on. He kept a really good track of his characters, and even used a continuum to show the change in the feelings of that character. He created a plot summary here, and he used the word so to show cause and effect. He recorded the setting, and then he added some information to his setting because it was a conclusion that he drew about the main characters in the story. And then for his solution, we learned how to make a when-then in the solution. So you can see that cause and effect lives in plot and resolution. The story events live in the plot and in the resolution. And using a story map, we gradually layer in these understandings as we teach the different comprehension strategies. And so students come to understand that the comprehension strategies are just that. They are processes that we use to increase our comprehension. We don't summarize for the sake of summarizing. We summarize because it generates understanding. It helps us to think. That's why we summarize in math and science and social studies as well, because the process of summarizing and writing is generative to understanding. These are the main strategies, and each of these strategies fits within the common points for mind mapping. And so as the videos accumulate, I will be showing you how each of these strategies can fit into a story map, or if we're reading informational text, how it fits into a hierarchy map. So back to the reading process. You're teaching children to monitor meaning while they read. Always think while reading. If you know that you're going to read a story, then you're going to make a story map. If you know that you're going to be reading informational text, you want to help children understand hierarchy. And so informational text is usually organized by hierarchy. And so I teach my students, and this is something that spirals through the grades in elementary school. Topic, main idea, detail, broad to narrow. So we're helping students understand informational text goes from broad to narrow. The comprehension strategies fit also within this type of map. And so we have broad to narrow concepts, and details are organized differently with different informational text. So we're teaching them that comparing and contrasting can be a way that an informational text details are organized. And so we're going to be looking for words that show how whatever it is that they're comparing are alike and different. But remember, this is the first point of reference anytime we're teaching. And so this anchor chart is critical. And so as we read, we think while reading, and the type of text determines how we think. After reading, there are predictable things that we do. We're going to reflect and review our text. And we might revise our prediction. If we predicted a summary that now we learn, wow, our summary was a little bit off, then we're going to revise. And then finally, after we read, we're going to respond. Sometimes after we read, we respond by just thinking and sharing the book that we read. As grown-ups, we do that all the time. We finish a book and we talk about it and we share it. Provide resources that allow your students to do that too. Hopefully, the respond to reading isn't answering questions every time. At my school, we're doing a graffiti art board that is providing a space for students to respond. And response can be rigorous. It should be rigorous. Response should bridge these understandings to provide ways for children to show that they know how to draw conclusions. For example, this time, our graffiti art response for our 4th and 5th graders is that they are creating a character analysis. So the characters are going to be on their graffiti art response along with an event that shows author's purpose. So what did the author want you to know about this character by including this event? And then they're also including dialogue. So they're going to make a speech bubble. And what did the author want you to understand about this character when he included this dialogue? Authors never waste words. And so if the words are in the text, why did the author include these words? Drawing conclusions and author's purpose are very similar in that they involve the same metacognitive process. And so the students have to include the events and dialogue about the character, and then they have to use the words in their graffiti art that show what is the understanding. So if the author included these words, is it because he wants to show you how the character's feeling? Is the character feeling anxious? Is the character feeling angry? Does this show you a character trait? Is this character compassionate? Is that why the author chose this event, to show you something about the character? And so the response part of the reading process is an opportunity to gradually release your students to the different points of instruction that is going to always be embedded in the process. And so the next videos that I share with you will break down the different strategies so that I can show you where each of the strategies fits within the reading process and within the monitoring of meaning. Because while students read, we want to help them understand that you don't just think about one thing. Literacy and reading and comprehending is not linear. We can't just think about the characters when we're reading. We can't just think about the setting or cause and effect. We have to show children how to synthesize. and how these understandings build layer upon layer. So for now, make sure that you have created this anchor chart with your students and that it is on the wall for their reference and for your reference as you teach. Make sure that you're gradually building a gradual release process for using mind maps. And so you're going to guide them through a guided practice interactive read aloud or a think aloud session with a text. And then you're going to be guiding them. Then you're going to release them to begin to do this on their own. This then becomes an accountability piece for independent reading. So as we wrap up this first session, as you're teaching your students the reading process, which will involve creating story maps or mind maps or informational maps, also known as hierarchy maps, you are teaching students through a gradual release process so that these resources and activities are going to be gradually released into your workshop, into your classroom environment. These are pieces that you will gradually be expecting students to be completing on their own with their own text and with their own books. And then from these creations, from the story map or the hierarchy map, response can be created from those fundamental pieces so that students can use their story map to create a poster advertising their book. Or perhaps they're using their hierarchy map to create a poster about what they have learned in whatever informational text that they've read. So you can see that these processes, these mind maps, can add to the layer of positive interactive tone, the classroom community that you're trying to establish, which is just as important, if not more important, than the solid lessons that you're teaching. Because if children do not have a chance to exercise the processes, then it really isn't becoming a part of their learning. And another word about exploration and providing opportunities for students to use these processes on their own. All children need opportunities and positive experiences with texts and a chance to explore every single day. And this need not be limited whether a child is reading below grade level or whether you have children that just come naturally to the reading process and do not require quite as much guided instruction. All of your students need and deserve time to interact with text and to explore and find text and ask questions and write and inquire every single day. Unfortunately, very oftentimes our learners that we deem as struggling are the ones who get the least amount of time to do this. And this equation is never going to work. The children who need it the most are the ones that may seem to be struggling, and it may be just access to text. And at school, you have the power to provide access to text and access to exploration and access to increasing their levels of curiosity. And this is what is going to create the learner, and it's going to move that striving reader to become a thriving member of your classroom. So as we close this first episode on the reading process and using it as the anchor for all of your instruction as well as the mind mapping, our literacy redefined with the learner in mind, I wish you the best in a lifetime of teaching and learning. Bye for now.